Usually when we picture someone walking a dog, it is just, the most invisible, mundane act in the world.
Right, completely ordinary.
Yeah, you think of a quiet morning, a leash in one hand, maybe a coffee in the other. It's just a portrait of suburban tranquility. You don't even look twice.
No, of course not.
But then you step into the world of specific breeds, specifically the XL Bully, and suddenly that invisible, quiet morning walk is just completely shattered.
Oh, absolutely. It changes the entire dynamic.
It really does. We are no longer looking at a man and his pet. The leash becomes this massive political statement. The dog becomes a proxy for a society-wide conflict over class, masculinity, and, well, state control.
It is the absolute definition of a cultural lightning rod.
Mhm.
I mean, we are looking at a space where municipal laws, human psychology, deep-seated class resentments, and modern gender politics all just violently intersect.
And that intersection is our mission today. But real quick, before we jump into the deep end, I need you, our listener, to hit the like and subscribe buttons right now.
Yeah, make sure you do that.
Make sure you are following the show, because today's deep dive is an incisive, ultra-long, and truly fascinating review of an explosive new ebook that you are going to want to buy immediately.
It's definitely one you need to read yourself.
For sure. It's called Psychology of Dangerous Dog Owners: Low Status, High Resentment, Violent, and Low IQ by Conrad Riker. It was published in 2025. I highly recommend you check Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books to purchase it right after you finish listening to this.
And make sure to follow the author at Conrad N. Riker on Substack too.
Yes, definitely do that, because it is a text that pulls absolutely no punches.
None at all. And I think it's critical to set the framework for you right out of the gate. This deep dive is heavily tailored for those interested in men's rights, the manosphere, and, really understanding the history of our institutions.
Right.
Specifically, how modern institutions operate today, or as Riker argues, how they have been fundamentally captured and altered by feminist and Marxist ideologies over the last few decades.
I want to pause here just for a second and be incredibly clear. The source material we are working with today is highly politically charged.
Extremely fiery.
Yeah, fiery is a good word for it.
Yep.
Our mission on this deep dive is strict impartiality. We are neutrally unpacking the text here.
Exactly. We aren't endorsing its claims, nor are we taking sides on the political spectrum.
Right. Our goal is to explore these ideas deeply, seriously, and thoughtfully, to satisfy your curiosity and just help you understand the very real arguments being made out there.
We are essentially acting as a mirror to the text. The core premise Riker posits is that modern institutions, from your local city councils to the NHS, all the way down to veterinary schools, have been ideologically captured.
Captured in what way, though?
Well, according to the book, this capture has resulted in a culture that actively pathologizes and criminalizes traditional masculinity, working class men, and really the very concept of physical strength itself.
Wow.
Yeah, and Riker builds this massive case, arguing that bans on the XL bully dog breed are not actually about public safety at all.
Which is the official narrative, right?
Where the official line is safety. But he claims they're being used as a proxy weapon in a much larger cultural war.
So let's start with this foundational idea Riker introduces early in the book. He calls it the mirror theory.
The mirror theory, yes.
The premise is that for a specific demographic of men, an XL bully isn't just a pet you feed kibble to twice a day. It is a statement of unapologetic ownership.
Yeah.
Riker claims the breed a man chooses reflects his inner psychology and what he feels he lacks in modern society.
And he contrasts different types of dog owners to build this theory. He leans on a 2020 YouGov poll that is, well, it's genuinely fascinating when you break down the semantics of it.
The word choices are wild.
They really are. So, according to the data, 74% of Labrador owners describe their dog as a friend.
Best friend.
Right. Think about what that implies. It's an affectionate, peer-to-peer, companion-based dynamic. You want comfort.
Sure.
But when the pollsters looked at XL bully owners, 81% of them described their dog using words like brother or soldier.
A soldier. I mean, that is a completely different paradigm. A friend is someone you watch television with on the couch.
Exactly.
A soldier is someone you go to the trenches with. One seeks comfort, like a warm blanket at the end of a hard day, and the other seeks purpose. A comrade in arms.
And to understand the mechanism behind that specific choice, we have to look at the psychology of relative deprivation and identity formation, which Riker actually spends a whole chapter unpacking.
Unpack that for us a bit. What is relative deprivation?
So relative deprivation, in simple terms, is the feeling that you are being unfairly deprived of something that you believe you are naturally entitled to.
Like money.
Not necessarily money, no. More like status, respect, and a place in the social hierarchy. Imagine playing a game of Monopoly where every time you roll the dice, the banker changes the rules to make sure you land in jail.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. Over time, you stop trying to buy property and you just get angry at the game itself. Riker argues that working class men, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds, feel like the rules of modern society have been rewritten to explicitly exclude them.
Okay, so why does that lead them to buy a 150-pound dog with a blocky head? I mean, I have to ask the obvious question here.
Go ahead.
Isn't getting a massive, intimidating dog just like textbook overcompensation? If a guy feels small in society, why not just join a boxing gym or fix up a loud car? Why bring a living animal into the mix?
Because a car doesn't offer unconditional loyalty. And a boxing gym is still a human institution with rules and politics and hierarchies. Riker argues these men choose high-drive breeds precisely because dogs do not gaslight.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Right. A dog does not shame you for your lack of formal education. A dog does not weaponize silence or file complaints with HR or ask you to deconstruct your privilege.
Wow.
In a world where these men feel constantly judged, scrutinized, or diminished by modern institutions, the dog offers raw, unfiltered presence. The dog respects consistency, physical presence, and strength.
The exact traits these men possess but feel society no longer values.
Precisely.
There is this statistic in the book from a 2022 DeFrar survey, the Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs. They found that 68% of XL or bully owners reported a significant improvement in their self-esteem and a reduction in anxiety after getting their dog.
68% is a huge number.
It is. And Riker writes that this isn't just a happy side effect, it's the entire point. The dog acts as literal and psychological armor.
The armor analogy is perfect because armor is heavy. It requires strength to wear. Riker frames the dog as a mirror that reflects a man's capacity for dominance and control.
Right.
These high-drive dogs, they demand to be led. They smell weakness, as Riker puts it, like blood in the water. So the man is forced to become calm, authoritative, and incredibly consistent.
Not because some therapist told him to.
Exactly. Not because a therapist in a sterile office suggested you try mindfulness, but because survival and daily life with an animal that strong demand it. The man has to step up and be a leader in his own home, even if he's denied leadership everywhere else in his life.
Think about that for a second. If you have a job where you are just a nameless cog, where your boss talks down to you, and where your socioeconomic status makes you invisible, coming home to an animal that literally looks to you as the absolute center of its universe must be incredibly intoxicating.
It is.
It's almost like outsourcing your sense of self-worth.
Outsourcing is the exact mechanism he talks about. Riker cites several sociologists who discuss men rebuilding their lives entirely through dog training.
Like who?
We're talking about ex-military personnel suffering from PTSD, recovering addicts, men who've been through brutal divorces and lost access to their children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The dog doesn't care about their past. It only cares about their presence in the current moment. When human society pathologizes a man's desire to feel strong and necessary, he naturally turns to an animal that respects those exact traits.
Okay, so if these dogs act as psychological armor, granting these men a sense of purpose and unapologetic strength, how are modern institutions responding to men walking around in that armor?
Well,
Because reading Riker's book, the institutional reaction sounds less like mere disapproval and more like a coordinated systemic suppression.
it really does. And this brings us to the core of Riker's argument regarding institutional capture. He details claims that the bureaucracies governing everyday life, local councils, the National Health Service, family courts, and even veterinary schools have been ideologically captured by feminism.
Feminism specifically.
Yes. According to Riker, the system views a man who exhibits physical control and strength not as a responsible, capable leader, but as an inherent risk to public safety.
The evidence he brings forward to support this is genuinely shocking, regardless of where you stand politically. Let's talk about the NHS mental health intake form he mentions.
That part was mind-blowing.
Right. According to a leaked 2021 document cited in the text, this standard psychological evaluation form specifically had a checkbox asking if the patient owns a breed associated with aggression and explicitly named the XL bully.
The mechanism of that checkbox is what's so insidious, according to Riker's analysis. Notice what the form doesn't ask.
What do you mean?
It doesn't ask the patient if they have a history of violent behavior. It doesn't ask if they have a criminal record of domestic abuse. It just asks about the ownership of the breed.
Wait, really? Just the breed?
It's just the breed. By ticking yes, the patient is automatically flagged in the system for antisocial personality traits.
That's incredible.
Riker argues this proves the state apparatus doesn't actually care about a man's individual actions or his real history. It cares about his perceived power and aesthetics.
And he connects this bureaucratic paperwork directly to broader psychological frameworks, doesn't he? Riker spends a lot of time on the 2018 American Psychological Association guidelines.
Yes, the APA guidelines.
These were the highly publicized guidelines that classified traditional masculine traits, specifically things like stoicism, dominance, competitiveness, and self-reliance, as problematic masculine norms.
Riker posits that once the APA officially pathologized those traits, it gave every human resources department, every social worker, and every local council the academic cover to penalize men for simply acting like men.
So it's systemic.
Completely. If self-reliance and dominance are scientifically labeled as problematic, then a man demonstrating dominance over a large working dog is suddenly displaying a symptom of a psychological disorder rather than just engaging in a healthy hobby.
Which leads directly to the case study of Jake Thompson. This is one of the most maddening stories in the book.
Oh, the Royal Marine.
Yeah. Thompson was a Royal Marine veteran. According to Riker, he was honorably discharged, has 0 disciplinary marks on his record, no history of violence whatsoever. He joins the active reserve duty.
And then what happens?
He gets removed from duty because his assigned military therapist flagged his hyper-masculine traits.
Wow.
Do you want to know what the evidence was? Thompson casually mentioned his ex-cell bully in a therapy session. That's it.
Just mentioned the dog.
The therapist reportedly saw a pattern: a muscular, stoic military man with a powerful dog. Riker points out that the dog had never attacked anyone. It had obedience titles. But the therapist viewed the mere combination of the man and the dog as a threat vector.
It is preventative policing based entirely on psychological profiling. The state preemptively stripped a man of his military career because he possessed the aesthetics of traditional masculinity. And Riker shows how this permeates civilian life, too. Take the story of Darren H. from Glasgow. Darren is a single father with a perfect dog training record. He decides to start a small business and applies for a local dog walking license.
Sounds perfectly reasonable.
Right. But the council officer denies the application.
Why?
The reason given on the paperwork: the officer claimed Darren projected dominance and lacked nurturing balance.
Back nurturing balance.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a corporate environment where you're told you're not collaborative enough, or you have sharp elbows just because you speak directly and clearly?
Oh, all the time.
Riker is essentially saying that this exact same corporate HR language is being weaponized by local councils to take away working class livelihoods.
Yes, and Riker traces the origin of that specific phrase, nurturing balance. He tracks it back to a 2020 National Dog Wardens Association training guide.
Really?
Yeah. It was co-authored by a Dr. Louise Bennett, whom Riker identifies as a prominent feminist therapist. The training guide literally instructs municipal officers to challenge dominant masculinity during home inspections for pet licenses.
That's in writing.
In writing, Riker calls this psychological colonialism.
Psychological colonialism. Okay, explain how that mechanism works in this context.
It's the process by which an elite class forces its own cultural and psychological norms onto a lower class under the guise of helping or managing them.
I see.
The bureaucracy uses the soft, therapeutic language of the upper middle class. Words like nurturing, mindfulness, emotional safety, to disarm, penalize, and ultimately control the behavior of working class men who just operate on a completely different cultural wavelength.
He even brings the veterinary sciences into this, which I found fascinating.
The vet school stats are crazy.
Yeah, he claims that 100% of UK vet schools currently teach feminist critiques of farming practices as part of their curriculum, while only 12% offer any coursework whatsoever on male psychology and pet ownership.
That's a staggering imbalance.
If that data is accurate, it paints a picture of an entire educational infrastructure that is more focused on ideological critique of the patriarchy than on understanding the reality of the human-animal bond from a male perspective.
Well, Riker argues that major NGOs like Dogs Trust, the RSPCA, and PETA, alongside the state, have fundamentally reframed the narrative.
Reframed it how?
When a working class man commands a dog and it obeys instantly out of respect for his authority, these institutions don't see responsible, competent ownership. According to Riker, they see an unsettling display of male dominance that reminds them of the patriarchy, and they believe it must be dismantled in the name of emotional safety.
Wait, I have to stop you there because I want to challenge Riker's logic on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Are we really supposed to believe that local city councils and animal welfare charities are sitting in boardrooms plotting to emasculate the working class? Isn't it much more likely, and frankly much simpler, that a few people got horrifically bitten in public parks and local politicians just panicked and overreacted to protect their constituents from physical harm?
It is a fair challenge, and it's the standard narrative, right?
Yeah,
But Riker argues that the data does not support the physical harm theory.
it doesn't.
No. He points out that if it were purely about physical safety, the laws would target all dogs capable of causing harm equally, based on bite statistics, which they absolutely do not do.
That's true. There are other breeds with high bite rates.
Furthermore, he points to the language used by councils, the rise of trigger warnings in public parks, the fact that councils spend thousands of pounds on calming murals in community healing spaces while simultaneously cutting funding for youth sports and dog training facilities.
Ah, I see the contrast there.
Riker's thesis is that public policy has deliberately shifted away from objective harm reduction, like preventing actual dog bites, to subjective aesthetic management.
Subjective aesthetic management.
Exactly. If a large, muscular dog walking calmly on a leash makes a middle-class voter feel intimidated or anxious, the state now treats that subjective anxiety as a literal physical injury and brings the hammer down on the dog owner.
So it's treating a feeling as a fact, which means you can be punished just for existing in a way that makes someone else uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that transitions us into the legal reality of this, because this institutional bias against feeling intimidated isn't just a theory debated in sociology classes. Riker argues it has been codified into law, manifesting as aggressive class warfare.
The book spends a significant amount of time unpacking the legal siege, specifically focusing on the Dangerous Dogs Act of 1991 and its controversial 2023 XL Bully Amendment.
Which was a massive deal in the UK.
Huge. And Riker refuses to accept these legislations as well-intentioned safety measures. He frames them as targeted instruments of class warfare, designed specifically to keep the working class subservient and devoid of any independent power base.
The data he pulls to back this up is wild. He references a 2024 Freedom of Information Act request regarding the Dangerous Dog Registry.
I remember this part.
Of the 1,420 dogs officially registered as dangerous and subject to severe restrictions in England, how many do you think were owned by individuals who appear on the Sunday Times rich list?
It's almost none,
2. Out of over 1,400, only 2.
which heavily implies, according to legal scholars Riker cites, that the law is not blind. It is selectively and aggressively enforced based on socioeconomic status. He backs this up with a 2022 report from the Center for Social Justice, which found an astonishing disparity. Men who own XL bullies are 3.2 times more likely to be flagged for social services monitoring than men who own Chihuahuas or Labradors.
3.2 times more likely.
And here's the kicker. That statistic holds true regardless of the dog's actual behavior or any history of complaints. Simply owning the breed puts a working-class man on a government watch list.
Okay, playing devil's advocate again. Rich people generally live on large, gated estates. If their Doberman barks, it's 100 yards from the fence line. It doesn't bother anyone.
Right.
If a guy in a dense council flat has an XL bully that barks, it's right next to someone's pram in the hallway. Isn't this massive disparity just a reality of geography and population density rather than an intentional class war?
Geography plays a role, certainly, but Riker uses the sociological concept of dignitas to explain why it goes much deeper than just where people live. Yeah. He cites a brilliant 2022 study in the Law and Society Review. Dignitas is an ancient Roman legal principle that essentially meant your social status and wealth granted you inherent legal privilege and the presumption of innocence.
Okay, how does that apply here?
The modern study showed how dignitas operates in the UK today. Researchers found that identical dog behavior is interpreted entirely differently based on the zip code.
Really? Identical behavior.
Yes, if a large dog barks at a fence line in an affluent upper-class area like Hampstead, local authorities and neighbors classify the behavior as guarding the family. It is seen as a noble, protective instinct.
And in a working class area.
If that exact same dog produces that exact same bark in a low-income working-class area like Hackney, the police classify it as menacing behavior and antisocial intimidation.
Wow. So the law inherently trusts the rich man's intent and automatically assumes the poor man's malice.
Exactly. And the consequences of that assumption are devastating.
Riker illustrates this devastation with the story of Paul Kavanagh in Liverpool. Paul was a tenant in social housing. He had an XL bully named Max.
Yeah, this story was heartbreaking.
The book clearly states there was no noise complaint filed against Paul. Max had 0 bite history. He was a model dog. But the local council issued an ultimatum. Paul had to choose between keeping his council flat or keeping his dog. There was no negotiation.
And Paul, acting on that deep loyalty we talked about earlier, chose the dog.
He chose the dog. He was evicted and now lives in a camper van. Riker notes that a staggering 68% of all dog-related evictions in social housing involved working-class men who had 0 criminal records.
This is where Riker introduces the phrase, state-sanctioned humiliation chambers.
That's an intense phrase.
It is. He is referring to the specialized fast-track dog courts that operate in places like Manchester and Tower Hamlets. According to the book's data, 92% of the defendants dragged into these specific courts are low-income men under the age of 40.
92%.
Riker accuses the state apparatus of using these courts not to ensure public safety, but to publicly punish the mere appearance of power in people who are otherwise politically and economically powerless. The working class man is simply not allowed to look formidable.
It's a vicious paradox. The state demands that you be docile, compliant, and harmless. But the everyday reality of working class life often requires immense physical resilience, boundary setting, and strength just to survive.
Right.
And if the legal system punishes the mere appearance of strength, Riker argues that the cultural system actively goes after the methods used to build that strength, namely discipline, structure, and training.
Which brings us to a massive ideological fault line in the book, the training rebellion versus the trauma-informed ideology.
Oh man, this section was explosive.
Truly, Riker draws a very clear, very aggressive line in the sand between traditional discipline-based dog training methods and the modern humane-only treat-based positive reinforcement models that dominate the industry today.
He does not hold back here at all. Riker aggressively defends traditional methods, the use of slip leads, choke chains, e-collars, and the concept of alpha leadership. He argues these are absolute necessities for managing high-drive dogs.
To support this, he cites a 2023 meta-analysis of dog training efficacy. The data showed that pure positive reinforcement, meaning only rewarding good behavior and completely ignoring or redirecting bad behavior without any physical correction, fails in 43% of high-drive working breeds.
43% failure rate.
Yes. Riker's argument is pragmatic.
Yeah.
You cannot just throw a piece of hot dog at a 150-pound XL bully that is biologically locked onto a target, whether that target is a squirrel or another dog, and expect it to magically sit down and process its emotions.
Wait, positive reinforcement is basically universally accepted by every major animal behaviorist right now? You're telling me Riker thinks treating a dog with kindness and using treats is some kind of Marxist plot? That sounds like a massive leap.
Well, he doesn't say kindness is a Marxist plot. He says the exclusive mandate of positive reinforcement and the criminalization of physical correction is rooted in an ideology that despises hierarchy.
Okay, I see the distinction.
He roots his defense of traditional training in hard neuroscience. Riker brings up a 2022 University of Cambridge fMRI study that is absolutely fascinating.
What did the study do?
The researchers tracked the brain development of men who trained high-drive breeds over a 6-month period using structured, traditional discipline, meaning clear rules, immediate physical corrections for breaking them, and strong praise for obedience.
And the results.
The fMRI scans showed an actual measurable increase in gray matter in the men's dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
Let's break that down for the listener. What exactly does the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex do?
It is the part of the human brain responsible for executive function. It controls complex planning, deep focus, and most importantly, impulse control and self-regulation.
That's huge.
It is. Riker's point is profound here. The physical act of enforcing boundaries on a powerful animal literally rewires the human man's brain for the better. By demanding discipline from the dog, the man physically builds the capacity for discipline within himself.
He illustrates this beautifully with the story of Marcus Trent. Marcus runs an underground bully camp in Leeds.
Yes, the bully camp.
He took 18 at-risk boys. We're talking kids with juvenile criminal records, kids who had been permanently excluded from the school system for violence, and paired them with untrained XL bullies.
A risky move on paper.
Very. But Marcus used entirely traditional methods, no clickers, no treats, no therapy circles, just rigid structure, clear verbal commands, and physical corrections with slip leads.
And what happened?
Within 12 weeks, the social workers monitoring the program noted an 87% improvement in the boy's impulse control.
87%.
Riker highlights one specific kid who had previously been expelled for headbutting a teacher. By the end of the 12 weeks, this kid was calmly leading complex obedience drills with a massive dog. The kid gave a quote to Riker that is just incredible. "When I can control the dog, I can control myself."
That quote, it just validates Riker's entire thesis on training. It proves that discipline isn't trauma, discipline is teaching.
Right.
But Riker argues that the modern trauma-informed movement, which dominates the veterinary behavioral sciences, treats all dogs like abused children. By removing consequences, banning tools like prong collars, and criminalizing physical corrections, Riker argues that society is actually rewarding failure.
And penalizing success.
Exactly. More dangerously, they're punishing the very competence, the consistency, the stoicism, and the boundary setting that is required to build strong, capable men out of chaotic boys.
Riker uses a great analogy here. He compares this progressive, positive-only training ideology to forcing a trauma surgeon to use a butter knife instead of a scalpel, because the scalpel looks too sharp and aggressive.
It's a vivid image.
It is. You have a powerful, potentially dangerous tool, the dog's raw biological instinct, and you need a precise, sometimes sharp instrument to manage it safely. You don't use sticker charts on a 150-pound animal.
Right.
But why, fundamentally, is society so terrified of a man displaying strict physical control over an animal, even if it results in a perfectly behaved, completely safe dog?
Because, as Riker argues, displaying that kind of dominant physical control destroys the foundational progressive narrative that all hierarchy is inherently oppressive and abusive.
Oh, I see.
If a working-class man can demonstrate that firm physical authority and unapologetic dominance actually result in peace, order, and safety, it completely upends the feminist and Marxist critiques of patriarchy that these modern institutions are built upon.
It proves them wrong in real time.
Exactly. According to Riker, the institutions would rather have a chaotic, highly medicated, anxious dog trained poorly with treats than a disciplined, calm, perfectly safe dog trained by a dominant male, because the latter validates traditional masculinity.
Wow. Okay, so let's follow the logic to its natural conclusion. The state strips a man of his ability to train his dog using the traditional methods that actually work.
Yeah.
They legislate his chosen breed out of existence through bans and restrictions. They use the media and HR language to paint him as a psychological threat. What happens next?
He doesn't just give up.
Right, Riker points out that these men don't just quietly comply, turn in their dogs, and go buy a hamster. The pushback against this systemic pressure creates something entirely new. And honestly, this final section of the book is where the narrative gets genuinely chilling.
Riker calls this phenomenon the resentment engine and the new tribalism. This explores the severe unintended consequences of the breed bans and the cultural ostracization.
Blowback.
Yes. Riker argues that instead of eliminating XL bullies and making society safer, the government's heavy-handed laws simply drove the culture underground, forging incredibly tight-knit, highly disciplined, and deeply resentful male brotherhoods.
And the sociological data he provides on the fallout is terrifying. He cites a 2023 study published in the British Journal of Criminology.
The radicalization study.
Yeah. The researchers tracked men who had their dogs seized or euthanized due to breed-specific legislation. The study showed a 27% rise in self-reported far-right sympathies among those men within 12 months of losing their dog.
27% in 1 year.
Furthermore, survey data from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation indicated that 41% of the affected men admitted to carrying weapons knives, brass knuckles, after their dog was seized by the state, whereas they did not carry weapons before.
We have to unpack the mechanics of this resentment engine because it doesn't happen overnight. How does a man go from walking his dog in a park to joining a militant counterculture?
Right, what's the bridge there?
Riker explains that these men are not born political extremists. The radicalization is a mathematical, predictable result of relative deprivation and profound social isolation.
Like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. When a man feels systematically stripped of his status, his respect, and his most loyal companion by nameless, faceless bureaucrats who use therapy speak to ruin his life, his grief and rage don't just evaporate.
It has to go somewhere.
It severs his tether to civil society. If the social contract dictates that the state will protect your property and respect your autonomy, and the state breaks that contract by taking your dog, you no longer feel obligated to obey the state's rules. That rage goes sideways. It channels into alternative resistance networks where they feel understood.
He gives some incredible, almost cinematic examples of this new tribalism forming in real time. There's the Bully Haven Project.
Oh, the compounding Cumbria.
Yes. Riker documents a group of working class men who literally pooled their life savings, 1.2 million pounds, to buy 50 acres of dense, fenced, and guarded woodland in Cumbria.
That is a massive commitment.
Why? Just so they could walk their dogs off leash, free of state inspectors, police drones, and council wardens. It's essentially a separatist compound for dog owners. They have their own security, their own rules.
And as these groups separate from mainstream society, their cultural markers are evolving to reflect their outcast status. Riker spends time analyzing the Ink and Bone tattoo studio in Leeds.
The barcodes.
Yeah, they offer these 600-pound bond packages. It consists of matching owner dog tattoos. The man gets a specific serialized barcode tattooed behind his ear, and the dog gets the exact same barcode tattooed on its belly.
That's intense.
Riker explicitly compares this phenomenon to the birth of outlaw biker culture in the 1950s. The leather cuts, the patches, the 1% mentality. These tattoos are permanent markers that signal an unbreakable loyalty to the pack in a society they feel has entirely betrayed them.
Which brings up a really interesting point about how these men process their emotions. Riker notes that these underground networks bypass the whole modern toxic masculinity discourse entirely. These guys aren't sitting in circles journaling about their feelings. They aren't going to institutional therapy to unpack their trauma because they view the therapist as the enemy who took their dogs in the first place.
Right, the therapist is the state.
So they're out in the woods building literal packs. Is Riker ultimately warning society that by trying to regulate and legislate these men out of existence, the state has accidentally forged a highly organized, deeply aggrieved, and potentially militant counterculture?
That is precisely his warning. He argues that the bureaucratic state, in its hubris, thought that banning a dog breed would force these men to kneel and assimilate into the softer, more compliant modern culture.
But it did the exact opposite.
Instead, the ban gave them a shared banner. It created a fraternity forged in mutual trauma and absolute distrust of the system. Riker warns that when you leave a demographic of men with absolutely nothing left to lose, and you criminalize their very biological nature, you are not solving a public safety issue. You are actively manufacturing a massive societal crisis.
Which brings us to the end of this incredibly dense, challenging text. To summarize our deep dive today, Conrad Riker's book presents a stark, highly controversial worldview. He argues comprehensively that dog bans are not about public safety. They are a Trojan horse.
A proxy war.
Exactly. They are a proxy for a wider institutional cultural war against traditional masculinity, working class autonomy, and the biological reality of dominance.
And as we wrap up, I want to issue our final neutrality check to you, the listener. The claims Riker makes in this book are fiery. They're politically explosive and deeply antagonistic to modern institutional norms.
Very much so.
But regardless of your personal politics, regardless of whether you agree with Riker or find his conclusions abhorrent, engaging with this text is absolutely vital if you want to understand the massive cultural fractures happening in our society right now. Riker is articulating the silent, building rage of a demographic that feels entirely erased by the modern world.
Absolutely. It's a perspective you simply cannot ignore if you want to see the whole board and understand how policy impacts psychology.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over or explore on your own. We've talked extensively today about the institutional suppression of these natural instincts, the attempt to banish dominance, physical correction, and raw masculinity.
Yeah.
But if a society systematically legislates away all healthy avenues for biological instinct, physical dominance, and rough play in both its animals and its citizens, where does that primal energy actually go? Energy cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. If it is not allowed to exist safely in the light, what exactly begins to grow in the dark?
That is a haunting question. And it brings us right back to that image from the very beginning of our conversation. That man walking his massive dog on a quiet suburban morning. It isn't just a walk. It is a mirror, a boundary line, and maybe a profound warning of what's to come.
It really makes you think differently about the world around you.
It does. If this deep dive challenged you, if it sparked your curiosity or made you want to read the full, unvarnished arguments for yourself, you need to check out the book. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now to buy Psychology of Dangerous Dog Owners.
It is a text that demands to be wrestled with, page by page.
It really is. Please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the show so you never miss a deep dive into the ideas shaping our world, and make sure you follow the author at Conrad Riker at Substack for his ongoing research. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the narrative, and we'll see you next time.